Hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. How are y'all doing today? Thank you to Sarah V for the 12th month, Amy for the 38th, and Corin for the 28th. I appreciate the support. I am. Thank you, the 14th. We are here today for, yes, a fun little idea. This idea popped up during the plushie sales where I promised that we would do the stream, and here we are. Laura, thank you for the 46th, 44 in a row there. Thank you so much. The plan is to rank the Big Brother seasons by live feed experience only. That is the plan. Sal's, thank you for the 37th. Is he jet lag get Tom Scott for next season? Like for real, or are they trolling? I can't ever look at Twitter. It's just, it doesn't work for me ever. It doesn't work. So I will tell you, my plan was to use a tier list. But they make you use images. And so I was like, okay, I'll use the little icon for each season. And then apparently starting in Big Brother 11, they stopped using the number in the icon. So it's impossible to tell which season it is. So that's not helpful. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Not sure what visual we're going to use yet. What do I think of the Golden Globes? Well, the reason I was a little late to this stream, a bit late to this stream, I said I was going to go on at 2 my time. But we recorded very long on Tastemakers. We went almost 2 hours. So that's why I'm a bit late. And in that, we went into detail about the Golden Globes. So if you want my takes on the Golden Globes, check out the Tastemakers this week. It's the video version will also have visuals. At least like we'll like have a visual of the thing we're talking about, which is I think very fun. Each season's cast photo could work. Yes, that could work. It will take me a while to get them all, though. Is the problem? They already got halfway there with icons. You know what? I could just start using cast photos, starting with the seasons where they don't have them proper anymore. It'll be a little bit of a mismatch, but we'll get there. Kansas, thank you for the 43rd. So just to sort of like be a little more specific, the premise of this tier list is going to be that we only look at the live feeds. And what that means is that some of the seasons I have to kind of leave out because I didn't really properly start paying attention to and eventually watching Jolly Worms, thinking of the 39th. The live feeds until around season 6. Is Grogu holding a ball? He's doing the glow. He's doing a globe. Hold on, I wonder if you can see that. Ready? This way. It's a globe. It's supposed to spin on its own, but it has to have light on it to do that, which it currently does not. So it's kind of in a silly place, I would say. But I put his hand there to make it look like he was spinning the globe. I used to think of the 62nd. I'm on season 15 now, so I'm making my way. Um, but yes, the seasons 1 through 5 are gonna have to be relatively unranked. I can give sort of a loose opinion on where I think they might be because I have gone through the live feed archives for those that are available. Season 3 is a little spotty. Season 2 is very spotty. Season 1 is basically non-existent, from what I can tell. But starting in season 4, it's pretty detailed. Um, let's keep this to Big Brother US for now because it will take way too long to get photos for all the other ones. I do think this is interesting because well, I do think there are some obvious ones that will continue to stand out, um, as like, oh, this was a great season and the feeds were great. I do think that there are some seasons where it's kind of like, oh, the season as a whole, the episodes maybe weren't that great, but like it was fun watching the feeds. Oh my god. I got to Big Brother 21 and I'm looking at the very obviously photoshopped David. Oh boy. I am almost there though. Oh no. And it really starts, you really start to find it difficult to get any kind of photo the later you go. BB24. Almost there. Wow, Kyle looks ripped in this photo. I did not remember him being that muscular. All right, and BB26. Yeah, floaty Kyle. It'll probably be too small for you to notice in the tier list, but all right, let's see if I can get this going. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I've got one extra. It's probably going to be this one as Big Brother 11, but whatever. Okay. Let's try this. We're going to go tier list. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Window capture. We can do other seasons, but getting the photos for them would just continue to take a long time. So we can just kind of like informally do them, I think is maybe the play. Woony, thank you for the 60-second Jenny, thank you for the 5th month in a row. Lindsay with 36. We bet on the winner before we do this. There's too many options. There might be something you can bet on. You know what we could do is we could also have a poll for each one, which might be fun. Or how would you do that actually? No, you just poll which tier it goes into. Okay. So let's make the tiers. We've got like the Pantheon, right? What are these colors? Can I change the colors? I feel like I can't even see that. Change background color. No, that's not what I want. Here we go. How's that? Better. Green. I'm just going for legibility. I'm sorry if it's not like. Maybe somebody can give me better colors to use here, but I just want to be able to. That's the same. Just want to be able to read them. I need to find one more legible color. There we go. Got the Pantheon list. Or Pantheon level tier. We've got like top tier. We've got let's call it great. And then we'll go good, meh, terrible. I feel like I need one more. Can't I add one? Add row below. Except now I need another color. Oh, we can leave it there. Didn't watch. Although if you guys are ranking, then maybe we don't need doesn't watch. Maybe we can delete that one. Didn't watch. Okay. So, I'm also not on the screen anymore. I just noticed. Oh man, I need to rearrange my scenes so I can do this more easily. Okay. Let's see. We can start a poll. You can have 5 here. Yeah. So tier it. Pantheon. Great. Good. Meh. Oops. Unwatchable. Okay. Yeah, that can work. I don't have polls set up to have a good visual though. Do I? I don't think I do. I just have the 2. Let me see if I can quickly fix. this work. It's gonna work. It's gonna work. Some behind the scenes OBS stuff. It's gonna work. Okay. So let's do this. We can start, if we're gonna poll the audience, we can start with Big Brother 1. For me, I didn't watch the feeds in Big Brother 1. You'd make this one gray. Just that one. And then this one like that. So I can't judge Big Brother 1. But if you watched the feeds, and listen, I'm gonna be paying attention. How many of you actually watched the Big Brother 1 feeds? If you watched them, you can vote in this poll. Which tier should the Big Brother 1 live feeds be in? Let's see if this works. The poll is now there. Perfect. And we can do like that. Who put it in Pantheon? Ryan, thank you for the 30-second. Only vote in this one if you watched. I only have 5 options for the poll, so I can't even put didn't watch. So far there are what, 10 votes total? No, 8 votes total. 9 votes. Yeah, so I mean, the experience of the live feeds for season 1. Here are a few key factors, right? They were free, so you didn't have to pay for them. However, you were on dial-up internet, and I can't imagine that they worked very well. I think I saw a lot of people talking about how it was very hard to make them work in the first place. But you also have to account for the fact that, like, hey, this was an entirely new concept to American audiences, at least. And revolutionary. And a thing that has really, I think, helped make the show what it is. Nothing else in existence to that point could give you the experience of watching live feeds in the ways the Big Brother season 1 did. So I actually feel like ultimately the audience, those of you that did watch them, put them in the meh category, and I think that's fair in terms of a comparison to other seasons that came later. But like, for the time, there's an argument to be made that it goes into the Pantheon. Just the concept of it alone. Like, any live stream on the internet by itself was like revolutionary, let alone live feeds of people living in a house. But if we're grading it in comparison to other seasons, then yeah, maybe it's more down there. Because here's the thing. For me, if I'm judging it myself, my own experience, I had the Big Brother 1 experience watching Big Brother 6, watching Big Brother 7. Like, that was my first time watching the feeds. And so it was revolutionary still at that time to me. So, there's different ways you could judge. I think we can put it in the meh category. Maybe bump it one up to good and just kind of have it there. Like revolutionary for its time. Would you ever go back and watch them? No, definitely not. You know, not for more than just like the novelty of it. Um, okay. I wish I could just replicate the previous poll. That would be fantastic. Pantheon, great, good, meh, unwatchable. So, Big Brother 2 introduced the game element, the proper game element. It also started charging for the live feeds. It has sort of, you could watch the development, the one of the developments. I'd call it the pre-development of strategy in Big Brother, including Dr. Will in his prime, amongst other things. It was still quite a novel experience. What do you think about Big Brother 2? If you were around to watch the Big Brother 2 live feeds, vote in this poll. If you were not, don't vote. One to five might work. Yeah, maybe I'll just type 1 to 5 next time. Big Brother 2 is a tough one. Like I said, coverage of Big Brother 2 was spotty for the time, and archives are not complete. So it is one of the seasons that doesn't have quite as much. Like I can't even. I mean, I can make an educated guess, but I can't make as educated a guess as other seasons, having not watched it in real time. A lot of goods. So if you are voting in this poll, please let me know why you voted the way you did, and we'll see what the cases are to be made. Big Brother 2, my husband started watching because how obsessed I was in season 1. Did not pay for the live feeds. Was a casual. Dr. Will talking to the cameras up close was amazing. Can't imagine what the feeds were like when they found out about 9/11. Were they down for a while? The feeds were not down, I believe. They might have gone down briefly and then come back up. The thing was, they didn't know about 9/11. They didn't know it happened. They just knew that no planes were flying anymore. They were like, something happened. The planes aren't flying anymore. And then eventually they were told. But what a wild experience to watch the only people in America to not know what had happened, the extent of it at least. Good. The people say good. We'll put it above Big Brother 1 in the good tier. I think that works. Dr. Will stuff was good. How the strategy was working was good. Then there's Big Brother 3. Honestly, I'm not sure it takes that much longer to type it out than just type numbers. Once again, if you were around to watch the Big Brother 3 live feeds, yeah, Monica had a cousin in the world in the Trade Center. If you're around to watch the Big Brother 3 live feeds, vote in the poll. If not, don't vote in the poll. Big Brother 3, the true sort of first season of strategy development, I would say, for the modern era, and sort of like, whereas Big Brother 1 was sort of like finding their footing for Big Brother strategy, Big Brother 3 was like figuring out what the actual meta of the game was. You had Danielle and Jason doing their secret alliance thing. You had Roddy. You had Amy and Marcellus. The coverage is still fairly spotty in terms of archives for Big Brother 3. The poll is up right now, by the way. But from what I have been able to look into and research, like, it definitely seems like it was a good time, I would say. Like, sure, watching Dr. Will do his thing in season 2 is, I'm sure, was fun, but like getting to see Danielle and Jason like have their secret meetings on the feeds. Could you imagine at the time, especially how cool that would have been? Like, oh, they're doing it. They're playing cards, you know? Lots of characters being entertaining. Pantheon to great is what the vote is. Ultimately, I'm gonna stick it in great. Um, I, I having not seen it myself, I can't commit it to Pantheon unless you guys were overwhelmingly in favor. Marcella's not using the veto on himself. Oh boy. Oh boy. All right, Big Brother 4 is where I start having a little more knowledge. I was not watching it at the time, but I have extensively gone through the archives of Big Brother 4. So I have a good sense of what the feeds were like and what was on them. I cannot know what it was like to be watching them at the time, but I at least have a decent sense of where they were or what they were. And let me tell you, the first thing that stands out is, oh boy, these people said a lot of really bad things all the time. It was like it's hard to get through a conversation without something that would get someone canceled nowadays. Oh. There was lots of relationship drama with the exes. And there was a lot of strategy, a lot of people playing hard for sure. Interesting stuff happening with June and Allison. So I'm curious. Let me know if you watched Big Brother 4 live feeds. What you think? What's here? The poll is live. This is of course the true beginning of floating as a strategy. Coming from June and Allison. So it's got that going for it. The first true split house, I would say, for Big Brother. One of not many, because it's hard to maintain a split house. One of my theories for Big Brother 4, why it had a split house that lasted, was that the X's were one side of the house, the original 8, the elite 8, were the other side of the house. Typically, in a split house, the split dissolves pretty quickly because one side has a majority and starts winning comps and starts just obliterating the other side. And the other side loses its identity. But in Big Brother 4, the X's had a built-in identity. They came in as a group. And I think that bonded them and prevented them from breaking up in the face of a big majority. And I think that helped create the split house. And I think that's what Big Brother has tried to replicate in future seasons with team twists. But the way that power is accumulated and consolidated in future seasons has contributed toward it being difficult to maintain a split. So ultimately, you guys are going to put this one in the good category. I'm going to put it at the bottom of good based on my reading of what I was able to see. Big Brother 5, the final season, I have no personal experience with, though I have gone through the archives. This is, of course, the wild. There are a couple of really fun things about Big Brother 5, I will say, for the live feeds. One is that you got the twin twist live, right? I know that people watching were like, oh man, did they switch? Is this Natalie? Is this Adria? That must have been very fun. You also had the Cowboy and Nokomis thing, but Quite honestly, I think that was more fun on the episodes than it was on the feeds. I think it was mostly just kind of uncomfortable on the feeds for a lot of reasons. But you had Jace and Diane and Drew. I would say overall, my reading of the archives, it was a little less interesting than Big Brother 4 in terms of like strategic things happening. But it had the benefit of the twin twist and slightly less slurs being slung around. So it had that going for it. If you were watching Big Brother 5, the poll is up. What do you think? What tier would you put it in? Nicole is dyeing her hair every week. Yeah. Jace was good feeds. Very fair. Backdoor was created. Yeah. Man, the amount of times that I went through the Big Brother 5 archives to try to determine who came up with the idea first is wild. Pretty solidly in the good category. We're starting to see a little bit more people who were around at the time. Lots of goods, though. Let's see. If I were to judge Big Brother 5 in this mix, I think if I watched Big Brother 4, it would have been especially difficult with all the things people are saying. I'll put Big Brother 5 slightly ahead. Okay. That's it. That's the season. Those are the seasons I did not experience. I watched them live as a kid. I was watching the episodes. I was just not watching the feeds. So Big Brother 6, I was not watching the feeds per se. If I actually, it's I'm so I definitely checked out Jokers starting in season 6. Um, I don't remember exactly because you start to like fake memories. You know what I mean? Like, did I watch them or was I just reading about them? I can't even remember now. But it was definitely either 6 or 7 that I actually started watching. And I had to figure out how to do that as a child. But Simmer, thank you the 6th. But season 6, I feel like I experienced for sure live. And oh man, I mean, it was my first experience, so it's there's bias there. But it was phenomenal. These people were doing things all the time, and all you had to do was just check the website, and there'd be updates on what they were doing. And it was just like, what? How is Kaser going to be okay? Is Kaser going to be okay? What are they saying about Kaser now? And when he had that HOH, whoo boy. And then when he was evicted, Now the caveat to season 6 for me is that I dropped out after Kaser left the second time. I was not checking nearly as much. So it was sort of a brief dally into live feeds for sure. Pressure Cooker was on live feeds. See, in my memory, I watched that on the live feeds, but I don't think I did. I think I stayed up and then I fell asleep and then I woke up and it was still going. I think that's what happened. And I don't think I was watching. I think I was checking Jokers. I don't think I was actually watching, but I who knows? It was freaking what? This is 2005. So it was 20 years ago. And I was like 13. But let's run a poll. Only vote in the poll if you were around at the time and watched the live feeds. And then I will, in this one, actually have a decent opinion. Here's the poll. I think the bits that I watched and my experience, this being my first real experience for live feeds, it's easily Pantheon. But I do have to account for the fact that like the whole second half of the season was like, like, is that gonna work for me? I don't know. Because the thing about live feeds is that even more so than the show, the live feeds are very responsive to is something interesting happening and do you have interest in it? So, season 6, classic season, top rated season for sure. Because even though the second half is a bit slower at times, it doesn't really matter. You're just watching the episodes. But if you're trying to watch the feeds, do you have the energy to actually be watching the feeds all the way through the season? That I think is a key component of a Pantheon level season. And that's why for me, I don't think I can put Big Brother 6 in the Pantheon. However, it was my first experience and I had a very good time with it. So I keep going back and forth. Ultimately, you guys are pretty firmly in the Pantheon. Yeah, let me move the poll somewhere. Let me put it like here. I think we can put it there. I think we can plop it in the Pantheon. First Pantheon season. But I think pretty quickly we're gonna start adding more to that though. Then we head into season 7. And this was like the first real full season of definitely watching the live feeds for me. Like pretty much all the way through. Kaser was there, and listen, I started watching it because of Kaser. And I was a Dr. Will fan, but you have to understand, like Dr. Will inspired me as a child. I was 9 when I saw Dr. Will for the first time. I was a huge Dr. Will fan. By the time I was 14, watching Big Brother All Stars, like, you know, I was like, who's Dr. Will? 5 years when you're 14 it feels like your entire life. I did not. Dr. Will was old news. Kaser was my guy. And I remembered who Dr. Will was, and I remembered that I liked him vaguely, but like, I was like, screw, it's Kaser. However, I will say, season 7 turned me into a Dr. Will guy again, for sure. Even as he was kind of the cause of Kaser's demise, I was like, you know what? I gotta hand it to him. This guy. So here's the poll. If you watched Big Brother 7 All Stars live feeds, what do you think? For me, this is an easy Pantheon. I mean, it was your chance and it was my chance, you know, having not watched barely any of these people on the live feeds before, to see all of these greats, these stars from previous seasons on the feeds, interacting, playing all these different styles of strategy, mingling. You had Dr. Will doing his thing. You had Janelle. You had Danielle Reyes, Kaser there. Like, I think Big Brother 7 makes a case to be the best feed season of all time. For what it's worth, also you had like a little bit of drama. Like you had some like behind the scenes kind of like oh, these people are talking about each other and relationships from outside the show that they have. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot more sort of, it felt very raw. And maybe that was just like at the time it was very fresh and new to me, but like it felt like I was learning a lot of things that like, you know, I was seeing behind the curtain, you know? Um so yeah, for me, All Stars, top of the pantheon right now. It looks like you guys agree. Maybe not as overwhelmingly in favor of Pantheon as season 6 was, but we're continuing to pick up a couple of people here. We've got what, 17 votes now. I'm curious to see how many votes we start getting once we get into like the teens and the 20s. Yeah, I mean, All Stars, I think easily there. The other thing too is that like Dr. Will was such a consummate like performer, and so he's always just doing things to entertain. And he was doing for the show mostly, but like, you know what, I say that, but he also like just lounged around a lot. But it felt like he would often do things, but then he would just like lounge around and complain a bunch. All right. Next up, BB8. Very interesting season for a lot of reasons. I paid close attention to this one. I was a big Eric Stein fan. And I was pretty anti Evil Dick. I thought he was mean. I thought he was a big old meanie. and I say that having not even really been able to comprehend just how bad he was at times. Because I wasn't like on top of like all of the controversy. I just thought he was mean to people, and I didn't like that. But then here's the thing: you watch the episodes, and you're like, "Aw, but he has a soft side." And like, you know, you can understand why he was so popular. At least you know, in the edited episodes. Which is not to say he wasn't popular with the feeders as well. There were lots of people on the feeds. In fact, that was one of the first seasons I felt particularly frustrated. Because when I was on Jokers in season 6, everyone was on the same page. Everyone loved Kaser. Everyone was on the Sovereign Six side. Everyone hated the Nerd Herd. And then season 7, like, you know, for the most part, people were on board with Janelle and Will and, you know, the people I was rooting for, by the end at least. Season 8 was the first time I felt like, guys, are we rooting? We're not rooting for Eric? You hate Eric? Why do you hate Eric? Wait, you're cheering on Evil Dick being mean to Eric? What's happening? And I was like, I don't know if I fit in. And you know, I say that, I'm sure it was much more varied than that. I know that like it wasn't uniformly in favor of Evil Dick, and I wasn't uniformly against Eric Stein. But as a kid, it felt like wow, like these people have a completely different perspective than I do, and that was weird, you know. It was weird to feel like I was so alone in my own thoughts and opinions at the time, when I was used to feeling like everyone had agreed before. So that was interesting. But then, yeah, you had a lot of the Evil Dick stuff. Now, again, this is not stuff that I think I really caught like the worst of at the time. And I say this, and I will continue to say this until, you know, later seasons, that like, at least where I was going, like places like Jokers, you know, the concept of like here's all the bad things this person has said, it either wasn't super prominent or it was just something that like I didn't catch a lot of the time. there was a huge Amber controversy on top of the Evil Dick controversies that just like I just completely went over my head. Like I was watching, I was reading about feeds, but I was either so focused on the game stuff that I just completely ignored the other stuff, or it just wasn't as big of a deal for the places I was going. But like, there were it was not like the big thing that you knew about for sure. At least from the perspective that I had at the time as a child. But definitely a lot of controversy. So if you were around for Big Brother 8, what do you think? Pantheon, great, good, meh, watchable. You know, controversies aside, watching Eric was really fun because he had his America's player tasks. So you'd often sort of like watch him, and if I'm remembering correctly, you would basically, we would be guessing like what did the audience vote based on Eric's actions. And it was usually pretty easy to tell. Like, oh, the audience must have really wanted, Amber on the block, or whatever. And then he occasionally had his little tasks that he would do, and you'd sort of try to figure out like when he was doing them, and so that was very fun. Not to mention the fact that like his just overall gameplay was really interesting. So some benefit there. Looks like it's being placed in the good tier. I think for me, it's still fresh and novel enough to me as a child, with the positives that it had, that, ugh, good tier, great tier. Okay, if I'm pulling it down, it's because of the episodes, and it's not. I'm just talking about feeds, and like, here's the thing: the feeds showed a lot of this. The feeds showed the all the controversial stuff. The episodes didn't, but the feeds did, and that was impressive, and remains impressive. So honestly, I would put this up in the good tier, or the great tier for me. I'm gonna bump it up from the audience vote here. It was I think one of the first seasons that really separated feeds from the show, and so that was, I think it's a good show for very different reasons than the feeds being good, which I think is interesting. It's part of what makes this show interesting. All right, Big Brother 9. Big Brother 9. I will say I did not watch a lot of Big Brother 9 on the feeds. This was this is the winter season. There was a writer strike, and they pulled out a season kind of out of their butts, and threw it on in the winter. And I was in school. Like, I was not nearly as invested in this season, and on top of that, there was nobody on the cast that I could relate to in any way, and I did not feel like I was invested in the characters at all. So this was not really a season I was watching much on the feeds. But yeah, the feeds were wild. So we know this. This is the season where, a lot of things were happening. And if you like watching orgies, maybe it's your season. I don't know. I'm not going to judge. So if you were watching season 9, what do you think? How do you feel? The poll's live. Yeah, you had like the medical incidents. You had more controversy, more people getting fired. You had lots of nudity and such. let's see. You did have some gameplay. You had a dude who snuck in pills, but I don't think the feeds caught that. Yeah, I mean, for me, if this is my list, which it is, yeah, it's unwatchable. I couldn't watch it. It was unwatchable for me. Uh, it's it was just not my thing. And was a season of the show that nearly made me stop watching the show entirely. Um, like Big Brother 8, yes, was a great season to watch the feeds for, but the overall experience of that season left me with a bad taste in my mouth, and that being followed up by season 9 made me feel like I'm think I'm gonna drop this show. But then that brings us to Big Brother 10. And really, is there even much to say that hasn't already been said about Big Brother 10? Like it just it just doesn't miss. There's something for everyone. Um you had the first week, with Jerry and Brian. You had Dan's rise to power. You had nomination roulette. You had Jesse and Michelle and Ollie and April and Jerry and Libra and Keisha. I mean, just like, what? Whoa, my God. There's just no, like, every segment of the season is interesting and entertaining, both strategically and dramatically. Rennie on the feeds was fantastic. Like, it never slowed down. There was never a dull week. It was always interesting. It was just, for me, the poll is live. Sarah, thank you for the 7th. For me, it's an easy pantheon, and quite frankly, it's hard to imagine a better season. I think All Stars is one of the only ones that comes close. Only a season 10 could save us from season 9. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I even remember like the final week with Dan, Memphis, and Jerry. Or sorry, I think Dan and Memphis spent nearly a week by themselves. The week before that week, Dan and Memphis continuing to pretend like they hated each other for the sake of Jerry maybe not trying his hardest in part 2 of the final 3 HOH. And then they finally beat him and they just chilled. They just chilled. They were just like, we did it. And they were like, what's our plans after? Yeah. Man, it's the last season that they do this. Which is really unfortunate, but like that end game where it's just like they just got to chill afterwards. I guess that's sort of what the game has become nowadays. The final 3, they're just like hanging out all the time. But like, I don't know, there was something about it that was like, hey, we actually accomplished this. It was at the time, it just felt so cool to watch the final 2 in the house alone together on the feeds. Yeah, that's easily going in the pantheon. All right, Big Brother 11. Pantheon, great, good, meh, unwatchable. All right, Big Brother 11. Not my favorite season. This one I was not a huge fan of. Another one, guess what? More controversy. You never would have guessed it. More slurs. More things being hidden from the edit. Lots of homophobia. This was not my favorite season. Now, I will say, and this is another one. I did like Jeff. I did. Now, I wasn't super invested in this season. And I did not know the kinds of things he was saying. I just didn't. Like, I wasn't paying close attention to the feeds, and I thought Jeff was like this stand-up dude. I didn't know at the time, you know, the ways that he was talking about, you know, the words that he was using. And the ways that he, you know what? Here's the thing. I will say this, right? I do remember, this is actually kind of interesting. I do remember later in the season, because they put it in the episode, one of his fights, I think it might have been, actually it wasn't later, the Technotronics fight. I remember feeling like a little taken aback. Everyone loved the Technotronics fight, but I was like, he's being kind of a douche. And then later in the season, I also got a little bit like thrown off. The Dumbledore rant comes in season 13. Another one at the time, I didn't even, this is because season 13 was another one I didn't really care for. I didn't even know about that until a little bit later. But I had already kind of, moved on from the Jeff fandom by then. And I also wasn't like the biggest Jeff fan either. In fact, by the end of season 11, came to be a Kevin fan more so than a Jeff one. Basically, in terms of Jeff fandom, this is my vague memory of it. As the season progresses, I was kind of anti-Jesse. I thought he was kind of like full of himself. And nowadays, I'm like, okay, it's actually very entertaining, and I should have appreciated Jesse for the time, at the time. But I saw Jeff as sort of like the like chill dude that's kind of a normal guy that that's like anti Jesse, and is like the gonna fight back against the majority in the house, and he's this underdog, and then like that was my peak Jeff fandom. I was like, I like this guy. He seems chill. And then the coup d'etat happens, and I was like, woo, that was exciting. And like there was a part of me that was like also kind of unfair, but hey, no, I mean, listen, it worked for Jeff, so it worked for me, you know. And then you had the Jesse, the Russell stuff, and Russell arguing with Jeff. I was like, it felt like, well, should I be on? Because I wasn't a Russell fan from early on when he was. I felt like, if I'm remembering correctly, I felt he was being mean to Ronnie. And so I already didn't like Russell that much because it felt like he was just so mean. But then when it was Jeff versus Russell, I was like, yeah, so I'm on Jeff's side. Obviously, I like Jeff, but I don't like Russell. But I remember feeling like, but isn't he kind of right? This was a time in my life where I ignored these voices in my head. But then the big turning point for me was the lie. The Kevin and Natalie lie. I remember them concocting the plan ahead of time and feeling like, come on. They're not going to believe that. Come on, Jeff. Come on, Jordan. Come on. Not going to believe that. And then when they did, and it worked, I was like, okay. I was a little bit disgusted. Disgusted is the wrong word for it, but like I was just like I was turned. It was the ick. I got the ick. They got the strategic ick from Jeff and Jordan. I was like, ooh, like this is the final straw for me. And really, you know, not the best reason to turn on Jeff. There are much better reasons that I eventually really came to learn in the future. But that was kind of that was when I started being like, you know what, this Kevin guy really knows what he's doing. That was impressive. I gotta hand it to him. So anyway, that was Big Brother 11. Here's the poll. If you were around at the time, what did you think of the live feeds? I mean, overall, what I will say about Big Brother 11 is that it was dramatic. There were fights, and it never really got that slow. Of course, you also have to mention the coup d'état and the Shima stuff, and the fact that, and I mentioned this, I think, in the Big Brother Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but first season to have a pre-recorded, first and only eviction episode to be pre-recorded, because they were worried about what Shima might say during the live show. Because in the first episode, first live show, she had gone off script, not off script, but like she had tried to expose Brayden for his racism and such, and they cut. And then then prior to her pre-recorded coup d'état thing, she was like, if you guys are about to let Jeff take over my HOH, you don't even know what I'm going to say on the live show. And they were like, well, we're not going to let you do it then. All right, it's being placed in the good tier. And so that's going to be this one. Yeah, that's going to be this one. Let's place it there. Bottom of good tier. I think that's fine. What I will say, again, for this season, we saw a lot of this controversy. And for those reasons alone, I'm not going to put it unwatchable or meh, because like, even though there was a lot of controversy and it was hidden in the episodes, the feeds showed it. They didn't hide it on the feeds. So that was good. I like that. All right. Big Brother 12. Now, to my memory, Big Brother 12 was the first time I remember experiencing the live feeders turning on a season. Like truly turning on a season and being like, this is incredibly boring. This season sucks. Which is interesting because I think that it's remembered as being more entertaining than it was perceived to be at the time. I liked it. I thought it was interesting because of the brigade. I mean, I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but like, I wasn't really that interested in the drama. That's why Big Brother 9 was unwatchable for me. And I didn't like the drama aspects of Big Brother 11. So like all the fights and stuff, I wasn't into. I didn't love at the time what Rachel Riley brought to the show. It wasn't until, season 13 to some degree, but then honestly, it wasn't until like years later that I sort of had a more holistic understanding of the show, and came to appreciate what she brought as a character, and came to like really appreciate her as a person as well, having met her. But at the time, I was like, she's bringing so much drama, and I just want the strategy. Brittany was fun. Now, because we're getting to a place where I can start really giving you some tidbits here potentially. But it's coming from my perspective as a kid. I remember as a kid going on places like Joker's and seeing people talk about Brittany and Monet and hating them. Hating them. They were mean girls. They were catty. They thought they hated them. It wasn't until after Monet left and Brittany started like making fun of Brendan and Rachel, I think, that people started to like, wait a minute, she's pretty funny. But before that, it's funny because in my memory, it's like that version of Britney is like a different, like, because everyone loves Britney now. I love Britney. But like that was my first impression of her, was that people hated her. Shay, thank you for the 60th month, 54 in a row. And then of course you had like, you know, Andrew and the Brigade. But the problem is that when the Brigade like finally took over, it got really boring. I was really interested in the way that they took over. I will admit that even I started to drop out toward the end of the season. Honestly, particularly after Matt left. I remember being disappointed in Matt and feeling like that's a bummer. Hayden's just gonna win now. Which felt like a bummer because it felt like Matt was really the architect of what they had built and was, from my perspective, considerably more entertaining to watch than certainly Matt and certainly more than Hayden or Lane. And I wasn't a big Enzo fan either. So like a lot of people loved Enzo, and a lot of people loved Lane. People loved Lane. By the end of the season, like the Lane Brittany like shippers were like big time. They loved Lane. They loved Lane and Brittany. But I never really like got into that. So after Matt left, I was kind of like, this is just Hayden's game. And I just kind of like loosely kept track of it and watched as Hayden kind of just like dominated the rest of the game. You were one of those shippers. So it's a strange season for feeds because it's the first season that you have a real proper steamroll. The game has been broken, and at the time, people really were down on it. And I was a season 12 defender at the time, but I was a little bit hypocritical because I was defending the season at the same time that I was a little bit checked out. So if you were around, what do you think? Polls live. But I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, you do end up having a ton of good drama. The characters are fantastic. The strategy is being innovated on in a really, I think, interesting way. But it's also the summer camp season. They had pool tournaments like endlessly. Have I ever been a shipper? That's a good question. I don't think so. I'm trying to think like who would I have been a shipper of? But I don't think so. Because like there were like Case or Janelle shippers, but I was never in on that. Caser and the veto. I probably, you know what? I liked Danielle and Dom season 13. But yeah, I don't know if that qualifies. I mean, you can let me know. I don't know if that qualifies as shipping. When I think of shipping, I think of like two people that are not together that I want to get together. And when I was like a fan of Danny and Dom, it was more so like I was a fan of Dom. And then when he got together with Danny, I was like, oh, that's cute. Like I like that. It's So I don't think that qualifies as shipping per se. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll find one eventually through as we go through the seasons. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just not a very prescriptive fan. Um in fact, I don't think I like couples until they're actually together generally. Hmm. Okay, good or meh from the audience. Let's see. How do we feel about that? I mean, for me, it did get boring, but it was interesting at first. It had a very good first half, and then a meh finish. And good and meh are tied right now. Um, I think they're so small. No, that looks like 14. Oh no, I'm never gonna find it now. Where's season 12? Can I make it bigger? That's maybe a little helpful. Um, that's 17. This is 23. This is 20, 18, 25. What's this one? That's 26, 15. This is, what's this one? That's, oh, that's 13. Can you guys see it? No, I'm blocking it. How can I not find 12? Maybe I missed 12. Maybe I didn't get it. Okay, let me just do it and put them in order as I'm doing it, okay? So we've got 13. We've got this is 15. This is, oh, here it is. This is 12. Oh, thank God. All right, good or meh? I think it can hang on to good. I think it can. Um, let's reorder them though while we're at this. Um, so this is 13. We're gonna go to 14, and then 15 and 16, 17. I just saw 18, then 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Okay. Did it. Whew. Okay. So next up is season 13. Just, yeah, that's good. Maybe I should move me down. Now that I've made these bigger. Season 13 was another one I did not care for all that much. Um, I was a Dominic fan. I was a Cassie fan. I was not super pleased to see Evil Dick back. And honestly, at the time, I was not super pleased to see Danielle back either. I wasn't like the biggest Danielle fan. I mean, I liked her more than Evil Dick, but like, it's not like I was like craving to see her back. And I think that was kind of the perception at the time too. I think she really made her fandom in season 13. Um, because I did come to like her in season 13. She was with the underdog. She was with Dom. She was, you know, she was much cooler. But I wasn't super happy to see Jeff and Jordan back. I wasn't super happy to see Rachel and Brendan back at the time either. And I was really wanting the new players. I liked the new players a lot more. I was really rooting for the new players, and they just got destroyed in the first like half of the season. And I was just like, this is just not fun. And then the rest of the season was just not very fun. Rachel did grow on me eventually, as I've mentioned, but like, yeah, it just didn't work. Just didn't work for me. And I really like, we have the Lawan moment, but it's kind of tainted by the fact that it's also like when Brendan comes back in, which really like, you know, continues to accelerate the steamroll. You had, you know, Shelly doing her thing, but like, for me, this was just not a very great season. But if you were around at the time, what do you think? Let me go back here. What do you think? Here's the poll. Now again, I didn't know about like I wasn't made a because again, this was a season I was kind of tapped out of. I didn't know about the Dumbledore rant until maybe the following year or something when like I remember like hearing about it and being like, "What?" But I wasn't a Jeff fan anymore at the time anyway. Um but I did not catch it at the time. I'm curious to know how big a deal it was at the time cuz like again, I wasn't super tapped in and I only went to like a few places and I was never I think this is important to note too. I was never active um in the forums. I don't think I've ever said a word in the forums. Um But I do remember being very over Jeff and his whole clown shoe rant. I thought was so ridiculous at the time. I was like, get over yourself. I didn't even have a great reason to turn on him, but I did. Um, like from my knowledge, at least at the time, I felt like I didn't have a lot of. You know, I was just like, well, and you know what? I will say this too. I feel like I was a little wrong to judge Jeff for that. Let the guy be mad that he lost on clown shoe. You know, I get it. I'd be upset. But I think at the time I was just like, yeah, see, this guy and his temper. Um, season 13, yeah, I think this is a pretty meh season. It has a couple of moments, but it was a tough one. It was a tough one for me for sure. And honestly, again, led to a situation where I was starting to feel like, is this show for me? You know, is this really what I'm interested in? And then Dan came back again. Yeah. All right, so we got to season 14. Another savior season for me. And genuinely, like, here's the thing. What I'm doing right now, where I'm sitting, my entire life and career I'm telling you, does not happen without the combination of season 10 and 14. It just doesn't. Those two seasons made me fall back in love with the show that I was drifting away. Like, there's things you like when you're a kid, and then there's things you like when you're an adult. And I think generally, the things you're really into as a kid, you can still appreciate them when you're an adult sometimes, but you don't usually love them in the same way. And I think that in order to really properly maintain a love for something throughout childhood into adulthood, you kind of have to re-fall in love with it. You kind of have to like change how you approach it, because you can't approach a thing like you did as a child and still enjoy it in the same way. And for me, season 14 especially was the season that did that. By this time, I am what? This was season 14 would have been 2012. Um, is that right? Season 14 is 2012. I'm pretty sure that's right, but it feels wild. So I was 20. I was 20 when I watched season. That's wild. I was 20. I was 20? Wow. It feels like I was younger. That's wild. I was 20 when season 14 aired, and it was the first season as an adult, enough of an adult, that I watched that made me go, oh, I actually do really like this as an adult and not just as like a childhood fascination. And not just as a like, oh, I like certain people. It also changed the way I watched the show. Because, you know, I loved Kaser. I liked Eric. You know, like there like I would like follow different people. I was a huge like going back even further, like I loved Will, I loved Danielle. You know, did I love anyone on season 4? I don't remember. I liked Jack on season 4. Um I on season 5, like, you know, you'd find your favorite and be like, "Oh, like this is the person I like as a child." And that's kind of how I watched the show for a while. Um and season 14 was the first time I really like, and I was always in it for the strategy. Like I watched for people, yes, but I also was like I watched for those people doing the strategy. Um and that's why, you know, I wasn't into the drama or anything, but I was into like watching them play the game. But season 14 was the first season where I felt like the game is actually the star of this show. And it made me really appreciate Dan, yes, but like what it really did was made me appreciate the structure of the show itself. Um, and hooked me so deep that like no season was going to pull me out of it anymore. I was like, if the show is capable of highs like this, then I'm in it for the long haul to try to see if it can ever do this, you know? Um, but yes, that is true. There was great drama for Big Brother 14 as well. Um, what I will say, I really thought the feeds were fantastic all the way through. And I do think that like it's possible that you either remember it this way, or maybe if you weren't around, you might think of season 14 as a season that doesn't really slow. Uh, because the beginning is super, super interesting all the way through to the funeral. And then even after the funeral happens, you still have these big moves, these big plays, like getting Frank out, Joe mistaking Dan for Shane. You have the Shane blindside. You have the finale. Like there's still these tons of big moments throughout the rest of the back half. On the feeds, however, I will say, even as somebody that appreciated Dan's game, they did slow down for sure. And there were people, I remember in season 14 toward the end of the season who were live feeders being like, oh, we're getting a season 12 all over again. You know, it was fun. I cheered for Dan when he did the funeral, but he ruined the season because now it's boring because he's just puppeteering every single mind in this game, and nobody has a mind of their own anymore. And they thought that was kind of boring. I didn't mind, but I will admit I also like wasn't as intently watching. So you know, there's something there. But that said, you did still have those incredible moments. Like some of the best moments of the season come post funeral. So, you know, even though there was a little bit of a slowdown, getting to watch the lead up to the Shane blindside and the attempted hit on Ian and, you know, all of these things, like that was still very, very fun and interesting. And I don't think like the slowness of it would compare to a slowness of a modern season, which is weird to say that Big Brother 14 is not a modern season because it always felt like a modern season to me. But all right, what do you think? Big Brother 14, where would you place it if you watched the live feeds? If you watched the live feeds of Big Brother 14, where would you place it on the tier list? Pantheon and Great seem to be top choices for the audience. I already know where I'm placing it, so this is more so just to see where you guys stand, quite frankly. Oh yeah, and how could I forget, Irie, watching Dan get them to throw the final HOH. That whole final week, because it wasn't just watching Dan get him to throw the HOH. It was also then watching him maneuver them into getting into arguments with each other. Like, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. This is a close one for people. Looks like a tie between Pantheon and Great for the audience. I will say, for me, this is an easy Pantheon. And for me personally, I think there's a good argument to place it below All Stars. But for me, the experience of watching, you know, honestly competes with season 10. In fact, hold on. I think, for the record, I think season 10 is the better season for so many reasons. But like being there for the funeral, the ups and downs of that season, you did also have an all-star aspect of it with Janelle and Boogie there. And also, like, for what it's worth, I was older and more mature and more capable of like understanding some of the nuance of what was happening as it was happening. I felt like I followed it better than I did season 10, even though I felt like, you know, season 10 I always followed pretty well. I the best moment of live feed watching ever was the funeral. Ever. I remember the excitement I had knowing that Dan was coming back. I remember telling people to watch season 10 in preparation to watch season 14 because they're going to have to watch season 14. I remember being so like bummed. Like, what an awful result that Frank gets saved by the coaches entering the game and then is like nearly unevictable to the point where now like he survives his week against Boogie and now he won HOH. Like when he won that when the feeds came back from him winning that HOH, I was like, oh my God. And then that whole week was just like, he's done for. And I remember like watching and trying to be like, can he pull something? Can he pull something here? It just wasn't happening. And when he was in solitary, I started to be like, okay, you know what? I can't pay attention. Like I just, this is such a bummer, you know? Like one of the downsides of the season is that, you know, it's pretty top heavy. And if Dan leaves this week, I felt like I've only got like Brittany and Ian. Like the only other two people I care about. And I really don't want to see Frank succeed. I really was not a Frank fan. Um, and also, and more important than that, like I said, like the strategy of it felt like, well, what strategy is left after this? Like, I mean, I was happy with what Brittany was doing, but like at the time, um, it didn't feel exciting. McGraw, I think, for the 60th, and I don't think this was fair. I think that if Dan leaves that week, I think that Brittany makes this a fun season. I really do. Um, but at the time, it just felt like, oh God, this sucks. Um, and then I've told this story plenty of times, but like I remember being introduced to the funeral with going on, must have been Jokers, and seeing people go, this isn't going to work. Whatever he's doing, this isn't going to work. It's not like anything's going to save him. And I remember thinking, wait, what isn't going to work? And then tuning in and he's like acting sick. And I'm like, what is he doing? What's happening? What do you mean? Is this a plan? Do people know what's happening? And I was like trying to figure out, like, what is he doing? Like, who knows the plan? And then the funeral happens, and you're just like mind blown. And then he goes upstairs, and you're just like in this like shocked state of mind. You don't know what to like. And this is what I think some people don't understand when people talk about the funeral being like unnecessary or like overly performative, whatever. Like one of the things I think that they don't account for is what it was like to be there and experience it in the moment, because it was so disorienting. Even as a viewer, even as somebody watching the feeds, not even there in person, it was just so disorienting. It was just like, what is happening? Like why? And how? And like what? And then he's talking to Frank, and I'm watching and I'm just like still reeling from the funeral. And by the time I realize what he's doing up with Frank, I'm like, oh my God, like this, they're right. This isn't gonna work, Dan. And then it works. And then I believe it was like it felt like ages. It felt like forever. I don't remember exactly how many days it was, but there were like days that they all then had to keep it under wraps and see if it would hold. Because it was like, if this gets out, they change their minds. This might not happen, and then the veto ceremony happens, and it sticks. And it was just like, I was just blown away. I think for me, the funeral plus so many other things, I do think, and again, this is my list. I recognize this is not an objective list, but for me, the time in my life, the time I was able to dedicate, the amount of sort of like comprehension I had at the time, the age I was, I think season 14 is the best experience I had watching the feeds. I think it tops it. Listen, believe me, I was not expecting to say that. I came in here blind. Somebody was like, oh, should we predict the winner? And I was like, that's boring. It's just season 10. Yeah. Okay. Next up, season 15. Season 15 is such a difficult one. Game wise, there's a lot to like about season 15. There's a lot of interesting things about season 15. season 15, really the true start of the big majority alliances taking advantage of twists. However, the twist didn't last long enough for it to do too much damage to the season in terms of intrigue. And on top of that, the star player of the season was very fluid. And so that helped tremendously as well. Tons of interesting game things happening in the beginning of the season. But I would say even more so, the end of the season was more interesting. The middle to end season was even more interesting strategically than the beginning of the season. The beginning of the season was a little bit hampered. So, but what made the beginning of the season interesting? Okay, I'm a little all over the place. What sort of makes the season interesting is that it starts with the moving company, and it seems like they're trying to do the brigade thing, and most people are rooting against them because they already had the brigade. They thought it was boring. They don't want another one. And it feels like, like this is just going to be the same thing we've seen every time. At least it felt like that. We've only seen it like once at that point, but like it's going to be more brigade. And so we were rooting against the moving company. And the twist, the MVP twist, which forms the massive alliance that uses Alyssa as their weapon using the MVP twist, cuts the moving company away at its knees immediately. And that was like, whoa, look at them. Like, they're not letting a brigade come in. And then after that, the big alliance is taking out the racists. And you're like cheering them on. You're like, yeah, get them. And so you don't really mind that it's one big alliance dominating because you're rooting for them to take out the moving company, and then you're rooting for them to take out the racists. And so by the time the big alliance starts breaking up, you weren't really that upset at the fact that it was a bit of a steamroll in the first half of the season. And then the second half of the season is super interesting because the alliance breaks up into interesting ways, with Andy facilitating it all. You had, Amanda, the domineering force on one side. You had Helen, the very sort of like savvy force on another side. And then you had like different characters in between. And then the move on Alyssa after Amanda's eviction was phenomenal. The way that Andy like maneuvers himself to the end, like lots of interesting and good things strategically. Then there's the things that were not good. Now, for some, they might have liked some of the drama, excluding the racism component. There was still other kinds of drama, like between Alyssa and Amanda and so on and so forth. Even that stuff I didn't care for. I thought it was very messy and mean-spirited. It was not fun drama to me. And at the time, I still wasn't even into drama much at all. And then there was the really ugly stuff. And now, again, I want to make this clear. Like, Big Brother 15 wasn't exactly unique. I don't know if you've noticed that, like, over the course of this whole stream so far. Like, a lot of these seasons had a lot of controversy. The difference was primarily that people were paying more attention to it and calling it out in a forum that was more centralized, as social media started to consolidate into these big platforms. So it was being called out. The attention was being brought to it a lot more. And on top of that, there were some big particular moments. Not to say that there weren't moments in previous seasons that could have been like this, but like in particular, the bed flipping incident was like a big thing. And while there had been other moments in previous seasons, I don't think there was a moment that was so easily, I don't even want to say digestible, but something that like a general audience that didn't really understand racism could watch and understand, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? because it also didn't involve like the slurs as much, which the producers for a long time were very hesitant to air, and they still are. So it was like a kind of racism that didn't have to be like, oh, they said these words. It was like, look at what they're doing and how they're acting. Um, on top of the fact that, again, it was being called out, and so they were kind of forced to show it in a way that they hadn't really before. Um, so it was tough. It was a tough watch on the feeds. I think for me, it was it's because it's hard for me to judge how hard it would have been to watch previous seasons have similar kinds of incidents if I had been A, paying more attention, B, like old enough to comprehend, and C, like educated enough to comprehend the full extent of. But by the time season 15 comes around, I wouldn't say I'm like super knowledgeable, but I certainly know enough to know this is really wrong, and old enough to understand like the significance of that. And so it was very tough. But the thing that I think works about season 15 is that it feels like they're losing. Like when you flash forward to season 24, when for the first like 3 weeks or so before the leftovers, it feels like what they're doing to Taylor is being rewarded and that they're winning, right? But season 15, they were just taking loss after loss. Like the bed flipping week was a week where they were taking a hit. They were pissed because they lost and they were one of them was going to go home. And like one after the other, they just were sent home. And so it felt like it was sort of this like little piece of like, oh, look at these bad people, but they're being punished. They're so bad and they're going home. And so I think that like helped people digest it, especially people that like weren't as personally impacted by the kinds of things they were watching, right? I think that like especially like a white audience was able to watch that and be like, look at those bad racists. But yeah, we agree they're bad and we'll send them home. And it didn't have as much of a lasting kind of like this is like a continuing thing that exists in our culture. This is not like an anomaly. This is just sort of par for the course, actually. And the fact that some of them went home, but not all of them, isn't exactly a remedy. But anyway, interesting season. Lots of ups and downs. I'm curious to see what you guys think. If you were watching season 15 at the time, what do you think? What's your opinion? Weirdly, I would say season 15, a lot of people's first live feed season. I've heard that a lot. And I wonder if part of that came from the controversy. I'm curious to know if that's kind of the case. Like whether you sort of realized it or not, the idea of live feeds came to your awareness because you were hearing about things that happened on the live feeds because they were so controversial. Yeah, I'm already seeing people in the chat say, yeah, it was my first season. And yeah, we already got much more votes here. Looks like close to just over 30 votes. So we're like double where we were just a few seasons ago. In the meh tier, I think that's fair. I do. I think that's a fair place to put season 15. It's hard to be, even though there are lots of good parts to it strategically, I do think that like it wasn't exactly a fun experience watching. And it's also definitely not a thing like if I were to watch a season 15 right now, I wouldn't be like, well, at least it's strategically fun. Like, no, I'd be like, this sucks. So I do think that meh. I think like the good parts of it pull it out of unwatchable. And I think that there's a good case to make for unwatchable. Um, and I think that like its place in time is one. But like, uh, imagine if like they hadn't lost. That's a whole different Big Brother. All right, season 16. This is another one I hear a lot of people say this is their first season. There are some season 16 defenders, amongst whom perhaps I am. I really enjoyed the season 16 experience at the time. And I watched all the way through. Like it wasn't even like a season 12 where I was like, I like it in concept, but I didn't actually watch all the way through like super diligently. I was like in the trenches all season for season 16. I was fascinated with how broken the game was. The ways that Derek just kind of like the whole, like, nothing had ever been done before like that. Like the brigade came the closest, but it was not the same. This was a true evolution of the brigade formula. And it was a formula. Like this was also replicable. And you saw people do it, like try to. And some people have. And it was so strategically interesting to me. I was just so fascinated to see whether or not it would succeed or whether it would fail. I think also a key element to this for me, which may or may not have been the case for other people at the time, but Big Brother 16 takes place in 2014, September of 2014. Big Brother Canada 2 had just finished airing in the spring of 2014. And Survivor, let me see. Survivor 22 was 2011. What was Survivor on? Survivor was on 25? No, I'm way behind. Survivor 28? Survivor 28 takes place right after this. No, right before this. Okay. And then Survivor 29 is the one that goes right after. Okay. So less so Survivor, but we had just watched Netta. Like if you watched Big Brother Canada 2, you watched Netta do some extraordinary things in that season. Go into the finale of Big Brother Canada 2 fully thinking that she had just won, that she was the winner, because John was taking her and she would win against John if he took her, and she would cut John and win against Sabrina if she won. And then watching the finale and finding out that like after a season of unbelievable maneuvers, some level of dominance, just like that, blindsided, she loses. That's the last thing you saw right before Big Brother 16 starts. And so throughout Big Brother 16, it's in my head. I'm thinking of people like, I'm thinking of the fallen angels of Survivor. I'm thinking of people who lost jury votes on Survivor. I'm thinking about Netta in Big Brother. I'm thinking also about it was just 2 years ago or that Dan lost Big Brother 14. So in my mind, there's still a lot of ways that Derek can slip up and lose. Um, and Big Brother in general to me feels like such a slippery game, and it is. But at the time, it particularly felt this way. It felt like the people that are playing really well, they really just maybe flip a coin to see if they win. You know, like Dan loses. Um, like Andy won, but that was a very different kind of game. Netta loses. Um, like Emmett before that in Big Brother Canada 1 loses. And it just kind of felt like, yeah, you can dominate the game all you want, Derek, but like, are you actually going to be able to win this thing? It doesn't feel like that's kind of what happens. Um, and so for me, it was like, how do you mitigate that? How can you, if you're this dominant, how does your end game play out? Like, are you able to do these things? And for me, Derek was so interesting to watch on the feeds because of the way that he manipulated people. Um, a lot of other great players, the way that they manipulate is usually just through uh, developing relationships with people. And I think that Dr. Will and Dan are kind of exceptions to this. They certainly make relationships with people, and Dan especially, I think, really develops good relationships with people. But Dr. Will is sort of like the devil on your shoulder, and Dan is kind of like the little brother, and they have their own sort of angles. And certainly Derek creates relationships with people, but Derek was somebody that you could really like. You could see what he was doing in a way that felt like they couldn't. That makes sense. And the ways that he would put ideas and words into people's mouths without them realizing was just really interesting to watch. And the ways that he would like every day like put out fires and make sure like he was always working and always doing stuff. I found that really interesting. I can very much understand why a lot of people did not and found it to be very Big Brother 12-ish. But where like for me the difference is Big Brother 12, the brigade, it really was just them kind of playing pool a bunch and then cutting people. Whereas Big Brother 16 was more so Derek getting everyone else to think that they're just playing pool all day. When in reality, he's doing a ton of work all the time. That's the way that I see it, or at least remember it. And so I found that interesting, even as a lot of people tapped out. And I can understand why they tapped out. It's kind of like, I would say, toward the end of season 26 recently. And there have been some obvious comparisons between Chelsea and Derek, where like in season 26, it was like, yeah, Chelsea is going to win. And for like a month, you knew that, and there wasn't really much that was going to happen. But you could still go on the feeds and watch Chelsea work all day, every day. She wasn't resting on her laurels. Same, I think, was true about Derek. He never let up. He never sort of like let go. To the point where people criticized him for it. He was just too controlling. But I found it more interesting to watch. I think nowadays that novelty is gone. Um, you know, the uncertainty I had in like, can this kind of game win is gone. It's like, yeah, the game wins. And it's not as interesting as it used to be. And in particular, it's like I was interested with the idea of breaking the game. But then once it was broken and we saw it be broken over and over and over, it was like, okay, I get it now. Can we go back? um So, with all that in mind, I really enjoyed the experience of the Big Brother 16 live feeds. But did you? If you were around at the time, the poll is live. What do you think? What tier should be Big Brother 16? Lots of different responses here. Pretty all over the board. Hovering toward the middle, though. Chelsea did rest on her laurels for the first 3 weeks of the game. I mean, maybe not, but I mostly meant the end of the season. The last month or so. Yeah, I could agree. I could agree that she wasn't as active as she maybe should have been. We talked about that during a deep dive, but I think what I meant was her end game. She did not rest on her laurels. Oh yeah, that was when Utopia aired as well. I remember that. Yeah, pretty like yeah, it looks like a bell curve there. Like it does sort of shape to the top half. More people in Pantheon than unwatchable, more people in great than meh, but ultimately the most in good. Um yeah, I think that I would either place it top of good or bottom of great for me. I think top of good makes the most amount of sense for where I want to place other things. Yeah, like Brittany kicking the soccer ball. Devin has a daughter. Like there are a lot of fun things in that season. And interesting characters. The whole Zach stuff. Like there was some good stuff there for sure. I think. All right, then we get to season 17. And this is the first season that I am covering on the podcast, US at least. Um, and this is a pretty great season overall. What I will say is it does have a couple of slow moments. I would say the first few weeks of season 17 are phenomenal. Then it has a little bit of a slow period where they're just kind of like they're just kind of battle of the blocking the previous majority out of the game. Um then it gets interesting again when they turn on Vanessa and she's forced to maneuver and survive. Then it gets really boring. And they're just like playing pot ball 24/7. Um then it gets interesting again in the end game when they blindside Austin and Vanessa is, pulling moves on the twins and all that kind of stuff. But there are a couple of little moments where I remember being very kind of like, he loved pop. That was the thing. There were people that liked pop ball. People really liked James and Meg at the time. James in particular. And they really liked pop ball. But I hated it. I was so bored by it. I hated pop ball. And the pranks, yeah. Yeah. So it's an interesting one. What do you guys think about season 17? Um, despite the slow moments, the good moments are really good. Like Vanessa, like here's the opening to season 17 feeds. They open to like preseason. Vanessa is everyone's top pick. Professional poker player, super smart. Feeds open to Vanessa sobbing, saying she wants to go home. And everyone is like, whoops. That wasn't my pick. That wasn't me. I didn't pick Vanessa. That was and then over the next couple of weeks, she finds herself outside of the big majority alliance, slowly weasels her way into Shelly's good graces. plants some seeds. Audrey's doing her thing. You got Devon figuring out the twins. You've got the whole Austin stuff. You got Johnny Mac. Although I will say Johnny Mac on the feed's not the most entertaining person. You got Jason. Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of great things there. And then you have then this is when the season really kicks in for me. Was when Vanessa is able to weaponize the twin twist to take down the big alliance and create her own power structure. That was like the moment of the season for me that like kicks it into gear. And then yeah, there's lots of fun moments from there. Austin begging for his life on Vanessa's HOH. The whole saga again with Audrey and Shelley, the Devon stuff, yeah, the Jackie thing stuff, Steve's, mostly unaired and shown monologues to the cameras, and his one-sided beef with Meg. Steve taking out Jackie and crying and being like, "Is Vanessa made me do it?" Proud, thank you for the 30th. And yeah, you must be silly. And or sorry, did I say Meg? Who am I thinking of? Becky. He's one-sided beef with Becky, and then Becky trying to take Vanessa down and failing her shot, like missing her shot. Like there's just so much good stuff in this season. So yeah, I think that season 17, I think we're gonna place in the great tier. We're gonna place it above season 8. Special place in my heart, especially as the first season I was covering, though not in a way that I really loved. I remember season 17 being a little bit of a frustrating season for me. I mean, not frustrating. Like I loved what I was. It was like such an opportunity. But I remember being like, I could do better at this. Like I was frustrated with myself because I felt like, how am I going to be able to convey everything that needs to be conveyed in like the spoiler section of a podcast that I don't feel comfortable speaking for like too long of a period of time in. And I remember being very impressed with like Meg's social game for a while, which really did keep her. I mean, if that majority alliance sticks, I think Meg probably is like one of the top contenders to win. And then Vanessa takes over the game, and then Steve plays Vanessa. And I'm trying on the podcast to be like, guys, I think Steve is the second best player in this house. Like, I really think he's like more dangerous than the show is letting on. But not really having a lot to like back that up, because it was like, what little moments am I sharing? Like most of the moments I'm sharing are about Vanessa. Because I only have like, I don't know if you listened at the time, but like basically we would talk about the episode, then we would go into spoiler section, which you're very familiar with. But like I was like a correspondent at the time. I wasn't like a host, and there was usually a guest. There's usually like a former player or something on the podcast as well. So it was kind of like, okay, Taran, now it's your turn. What are we missing from the feeds? And it was like, okay, I have to condense 3+ days into, I probably have like 2 to 3 things max that I can bring up, and probably 60 to 90 seconds per thing, because I can't talk for more than 2 minutes uninterrupted when there's a guest here and I'm new, and so on and so forth. So I remember in particular really trying to be like, wait, guys, Vanessa weaponized the twin twist. Like it's like it was wild. It was wild. But anyway, yeah, great season. Great live feed experience. BB18. Pantheon, great, good, meh, unwatchable. Season 18, it was pretty polarizing. I think I remember there being lots of arguments about, is this a good season? Is this not a good season? I think it's remembered more fondly than it was being perceived at the time. Um, Especially because, yeah, I think Anthony has it right there. The beginning was not very popular. Um, it was another, mixed season, new players, vets, and the beginning of the season was a lot of just like vet drama. It all that Frank stuff, which is very not fun. Um, and you had like Paulie doing really well for a while. It wasn't until Paulie's downfall that things got fun and interesting. And then the back half of the season is pretty good, I would say. Pretty good feeds. Um, but the first half, not as much. So, I think there's a bit of an up and down for this season. What do you guys think if you watch this season? Looks like we've got a bit over 40 votes for season 17. Season 18, what do you think? Poll is live. Um, it is Paul's first season. Paul was very popular this season. Um, but again, I think when people think of season 18, they really only remember the second half of it. Because like Paul was not very popular in the first half of the season. Paul was pretty unpopular. Remember, it was PP, and Paulie and Paul were like had the same haircut, and everyone hated them. Um, the season's probably higher if James doesn't spoil blind sides, yeah. And you did have like the Nicole and Davon stuff in the first half. You had a little bit of, again, like the Frank stuff, but like I think a lot of people try to remove the Frank stuff from their brains. Um, the Bronte blindside. You guys are placing it in the good tier. I think that's pretty fair. I think I would place this. Here, I'm going to move this above season 11. I'm going to place season 18 below 11. Yeah, I think so. Okay, into season 19. Now, this is another season. It's a very special season. Do you know why this is a very special season? Who can guess? Yes, repeatedly. Got it first there. First US season for live feed updates. Might have been the first season period. I don't remember. Yeah, you know what? I think it was the first season period, actually. Because I'm thinking of Big Brother Canada 6. But Big Brother Canada 6 was May of 2018. And Big Brother 19 was June of 2017. So yeah, very first live feed update season. This is when I left my job, kind of blindly. Just decided, like, you know what? I'm just gonna not have a job. I'm just gonna do this. I'm just gonna do live feed updates. Um, I don't know. I'm sure I've told this story before, but like, I was not getting paid to support myself at the time when I did that. I just kind of jumped. Um, and then luckily the live feed updates help me land. Because I mean, think about it, right? I I couldn't, nobody can do the live feed updates in the way that I do them and also have a different full time job. It is my full time job. Um, did Rob convince me? No. So Rob's idea of the live feed update was very different than mine. Rob's idea for the live feed update was sort of like a rotating, panel that would take shifts and spend like 15 minutes a day giving a little update on what happened. My idea for the live feed update was I would spend as much time as I needed to go through everything every day. And I would be there every time. I would be a consistent presence. And if I had guests, I had guests. And so Rob kind of put me in charge of the project to like schedule things and like run it. And so I just scheduled myself in every one. And then eventually Rob was like, I didn't realize you were going to do all of them. And I was like, yeah. So I'm just going to do all of them. And he was like, I didn't think that was possible. I thought that somebody would literally go crazy if they tried to do that. And I was like, I think I'm good. Luckily it worked out. And then I'd started the Taran show. And it kind of worked. Anyway, season 19 was the first season. And boy, what a season to start with, because there was lots of drama, for sure. There was a lot of, I thought, interesting strategy, at least in the beginning. But yeah, it got pretty slow. So if you were around for Big Brother 19, you watched the feeds, or at least listen. When I say watch the feeds too, like I count it. The poll is live. I count it if you consume the feeds however you want to. Like I didn't really like for instance, season 6. I wasn't like watching everything if I watched it all. I don't remember. But like I was aware. I went to Jokers, right? So I count that enough that I gave an opinion. Same thing here. If you don't watch the feeds, but you say listen to the updates or go on Twitter and stay on top of everything that's happening, or whatever you do nowadays, I think that counts. I think that you're a feeder. I really do. There's going to be some differences between people who actually watch versus people who consume via other sort of stories and reports. But I think that that's an essential part of being a fan of the show, is that you can absolutely consume it via other means. 44% meh. I think I will agree there. I think that there's definitely a case to be made that it's unwatchable. For me, though, there are a couple of small redeeming features of the season. And it also, holds a special place in my heart. First live feed update season. So, if I had to decide between watching from start to finish the feeds of Big Brother 9 and the feeds of Big Brother 19, I would choose Big Brother 19. All right. Next, Big Brother 20. Big Brother 20 was a great season for like the first 2/3. We all know this. It's the only talking point. Great 2/3 of a season. Very boring last third of a season. JV, thank you for the 15th month in a row. The feeds for the first 2/3 of season 20, I think, no joke, Pantheon. If the last third of Big Brother 20 was honestly even kind of passable, I might keep it in the Pantheon. But the last third was like really not great. Like, you really, like, everyone noped out of the season. I remember I was doing the live feed updates. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. After Scotty, there was nothing left. And I at the time I was a season 20 apologist. I was like, hey, this is still a great season, even if things have gotten a little boring. And I still contend that. However, even I must admit that it was just not a fun last third of the season. But the first 2/3, easily Pantheon. So good. Every single week was a different blindside. It was a different like thing that was happening. There was drama. There were characters. The episodes were great and the feeds were great. So where does that land it? I don't know. What do you guys think? Poll is live. If you were watching Big Brother 20 at the time. Looks like majority on great. That's pretty much where I am. I think it's great season. Nearly Pantheon season. Just falls short. And I will put it above Big Brother 3 because I don't have a personal experience with Big Brother 3. One of your favorite live feed updates during 20? I remember I remember the first time I remember doing like any kind of impression or reenactment was one of the fights of Big Brother 19. And I remembered at the time because I always saw myself as like a really boring podcaster. And I remember being like, what if I just tried to let loose a little bit? Like, and you know, I think the reason why I decided to do that was because there was this fight that happened and it was so ridiculous when I watched it. I was like, this is such a ridiculous fight. And the way that they're acting in this fight is so ridiculous. This is season 19. And I was like, I feel like the way that I generally present things, and I don't think I think I was hard on myself. I don't think I was that boring. I think I joked around. I had a good time. I played the heel a bunch. Like, I was doing that stuff. But like, I don't think I ever got like super goofy. And because like, I think maybe I was a little self-conscious about being goofy, right? But if I wanted, I was like, if I want to be able to portray this, if I want to like give people who did not watch this a taste of what it was like to watch this, like, I need to be goofy because it was such a goofy thing that happened. Jolly Worms has it. It was Matt Klein's. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's like, how do you convey that to people who didn't watch it unless you just do it? You know what I mean? It was so stupid. It was so ridiculous and goofy. And if I didn't just full on goofy it up, it would be me being like, and then he was saying, what are you going to do? Like super high pitched. It was so ridiculous. And I remember people really liking when I did that, and that was being very like validating. Like, you know what? I can be goofy. I can be goofy, and people are not going to judge me. And people do judge me, but you know what? Other people like it. All right. Season 20, great season. Next, season 21. Season 21 is one of those seasons where it's like, I would say the majority of it is nigh unwatchable. But there are a few moments of greatness. Day 44. Great day. Zachary Mike. Thank you for the raid. Welcome. We are tier listing Big Brother seasons by live feeds only. Only judging them by the live feeds. If anybody that has joined is interested in that. Big Brother 21, day 44. Great day. Great day live feeds. And then, if you're really deep into it, all the behind the scenes stuff, the leaked footage. You had some interesting things. Taco Tuesday. You had Cliff. You had Nicole. Yeah, so I don't know if you don't know the story. There was some random person on the internet came out and leaked the footage of like the running camera on Julie, as well as like what was happening in the house when the feeds were down prior to the live show on day 44. They came out and just dumped the footage on the internet. And they said, yeah, I've been getting this stuff for years. There's some sort of like exploit in their satellite transfer that I've tapped into and have just been getting this footage of when the feeds are down for years. And they decided to release this one because it was particularly interesting. And Julie was like on camera, like getting ready. It's wild. And they were, I think at the time, I remember them being like promising, like, hey, I can dump more of this footage, so on and so forth. And then I remember they reached out to me asking me for advice at some point. I remember. And I feel like if I'm remembering correctly, what I said to them was something along the lines of like, you should be very careful. Like, it's very cool that you have this stuff. I didn't say this. I think what I said, because what I said was, I was very conscious of the fact that this is like, you know, this is a person who's done a thing. I don't know if it's legal or not. And I am not going to be on record approving of it or telling them to do more of it. But basically what I said was like, listen, I think you should be very careful about this. I think this is a very dangerous thing for you to be so public with. And I don't think it was on my advice, but this person disappeared from the internet. I have no idea where they are now. And I assume that they very much closed up that hole in their system. But yeah, what a wild time. All right, what do you think? Big Brother 21? What tier? Yeah, it had those moments, but man, there was a lot of bad stuff. It was a very controversial season. for a lot of different reasons. This was a season where it really started to feel like they were really starting to like really hide stuff from us. Like we're not seeing everything. Oh yeah, Mickey framing Tommy was good for sure. Mitch, thank you for the 76th. Um, like there was some good stuff in here, but also a lot of bad stuff. And if I'm trying to compare it to 19, it's like, is it better than 19? There are some positives, some negatives. I think overall I'd put it just above 19 because it has those good moments. Is it better than 15? I mean, it has maybe not as much racism, but it has plenty of it. Reconnection successful. Am I back? My internet is definitely still struggling. Okay, starting to. I was in red, now in yellow, now I'm green again. I'm green. Okay, we're good. We're good. BB cutting feeds when racism is brought up. Typical. Uh, wasn't I just talking about that too? Anyway, I'd fully gone into talking about Big Brother 22. I didn't know I was out. Um Anyway, Big Brother 22, All Stars 2. um the return of All Stars. It was in the midst of a pandemic. And a lot of people came back. This season really started to get bad with feed cuts for sure. Lots of bad feed cuts. The game was not particularly exciting. I do think there are some redeeming moments. We get to see Kaser and Janelle again. Oh, am I buffering again? Oh, geez. What's happening? My internet should be fine. Like the first couple of weeks are pretty interesting. The way that Cody sets up his structure, with Kaser and Janelle trying to fight back. You had that whole like Nicole Anthony saga, which I thought was like wild. So there was some good stuff there. Then they keep winning and winning and winning. And then it starts to get interesting. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Tyler versus Cody. Tyler's starting to undermine Cody's positioning. Tyler's starting to, oh, and he's going to quit the game. Yep, never mind. And then they keep winning and winning and winning. And then Devon wins a veto. And you're like, oh, look at that. And they're just going to take out, okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And then they keep winning and winning and winning. And then Memphis makes the whole Wise Guys alliance, the double Wise Guys. That was pretty funny. But then, you know what? Guess what they do in response? They just keep winning. And then Cody cuts Nicole in the final three. That was pretty fun. I mean, not for Nicole, obviously, but good TV moment. But overall, yeah, not exactly the most fun experience on the live feeds. What do you guys think? Polls live. You were watching Big Brother 22. Cutting Nicole is not on the feeds is a good point, actually. I mean, I will say, watching Cody like play her leading up to it was interesting. Oh yeah, the whole David saga, not the more controversial side, but the David saga where he like accidentally kept throwing people under the bus. That was very funny. I found that to be very funny. And then the whole like, are you the one that saved me? That was pretty funny too. Unwatchable, says the audience. Do I think it was unwatchable? No. Do I think it was worse than 19? Hmm. I think it was more disappointing than 19 because the expectations were so much higher. But the thing too is though is that like it also was during the pandemic and nobody had anything else to do. '19 had drama that was watchable. That's fair, but like I don't really care for drama. I think maybe that's part of why people hate this season so much is because they had nothing else to do. It was worse because on a normal season, if it gets boring, you just stop paying attention. But on All Stars 2, it was like the thing. It was like the thing that was supposed to give you something to do. And so you just kept watching it even when it was boring. It was like, this sucks. You know what? You know what, Irie? That's a good point. The feed cuts. The feed cuts, I think, keep it below 19 because because at least you get to, at least they weren't hiding the controversial things in seasons like 19, 21, and 15. And while I don't think anything happened in 22 that was as bad as those seasons, there was still some controversy and they tried to hide it from us. And they had feeds down for days at a time. So I do think that severely that tips the scales for me. All right. By the way, we're almost at 3 hours. I genuinely thought this would be an hour-long stream. Big Brother 23. Big Brother 23. A lot of good things to say about this season. I think the worst thing you would say is about this season is it has. You could say that there's a lack of drama, which I think is fair, but I think in the context of the modern era, the amount of drama is actually fine. It's like moderate. Um, there's definitely a steamroll, and things get pretty predictable. So that's probably its biggest fault. Um, but there are a lot of really interesting things as well. Um, seeing a variation on the brigade uh, is maybe not the most interesting thing in the world, but a 6-person version that is very unique in its cause, and the reason why people are loyal to it is really interesting. And the discussion that this helped generate, I think, was really interesting. Tiffany and Claire was super. This is what, when I mentioned drama, I remembered Tiffany and Claire, and that's the kind of drama that I'm interested in. That was very, very dramatic. Um, and there were some arguments, but not many. Uh, some great characters. Some really good first third of the season, I would say, just in general. I know people think a lot about the last third being really boring, but like the first third was very good. Between Frenchie and the fisherman and taking him down and then building up their own thing. And then, then there's like the rise and fall of Derek X, and all that stuff. So there's it's I would say it's a good season overall. For live feeds, you did have Kyland and Sarah Beth, I think, which is a little bit of a down. um, and just in general, like lots of good and interesting conversations that were had that season. Um, and I found it so interesting, and I hope illuminating, um, to see the cookout operate in the way that they did and struggle with, is this good for my personal game? Is this something that I feel like I have to do for something outside of my personal game? I thought that was a really like compelling thing to watch. Um, at the same time, there were, it was pretty slow for a decent portion. So, what do you guys think? Big Brother 23, what tier you place this one in? Oh yeah, the Kylan and Xavier fight was definitely drama. Oh boy. Claire and Derek X Hammock Talks. This was also the first season where my Twitch channel was shouted at, I think, via Claire. Like specifically the Twitch. Who doesn't love Claire? The Claire and Derek showmance, I think, is phenomenal. The way that it came about. And then them winning the Amazing Race, and that's another one where you were like, like I never shipped Derek and Claire, but I'm like I love them as people, you know what I mean? And yeah, like the reveal. Audience says great. I thought this was maybe a bit of a hotter take for me, but I put it in great. I'd put it probably toward the bottom of great. Um, but I did really like it. The COVID test preseason, yeah. It's wild the small things that can change so much. A false negative COVID test is the difference between Claire just living a completely like maybe sorry, false negative, false positive COVID test is the difference between Claire, who knows what she's doing with her life nowadays if she doesn't go on the show, but like maybe still working for Microsoft or something. And having never gotten on a show or whatever, to finding her current partner, winning $1 million on The Amazing Race, you know, like just such a different path in life. I mean, yeah, when the alternative is like she works for Microsoft, it's like, okay, well, she's probably doing fine, but crushing on Derek X from afar, yeah. All right, season 24. Interesting one. Definitely a rough start, but boy, does it come back. It comes back pretty good. I think from the moment the leftovers are formed to basically the finale, the feeds are very good most of the time. There was a frustrating feed cut situation for both Direfest and the Kyle situation. However, having feeds from day one as opposed to day, say, 5 or 6 was huge in getting to see what happened with Taylor. I think the live feeds are an essential component to the season. And so I really do think that like season 24 has some of like the highest highs of watching feeds. And ultimately, like the best moment of the season is, I think, the finale, which is not feeds related. But what I will say is that the finale does not hit nearly as hard if you have not been watching feeds from day one. Like they are an essential component to truly feeling that in the way that you did. Um, Watching her prep, yeah. So what do you guys think? Where does Big Brother 24 fall on the tier list? Little all over the place so far. Poll is live. You had Muffin Gate. um, it's also just such a unique season in the way that the story played out. Joseph's birthday. Looks like you guys think it's fairly firmly in the great category. Um, I think that I am going to go a bit higher than you. I'm going to place it up in the Pantheon. Yeah. I just think that it's so unique, and it's one of the best examples of a season of the show that makes the case for live feeds like more than any other. Like it's just such a live feed centric story. There are things I don't like about the feeds from that season, but like, if you were to make a case for why the live feeds are good and important, I think season 24 is your best argument. And also like has a ton to teach people, I think. Season 23 also, but like season 24 I think is so illuminating in the ways that things develop and can be overcome. Phenomenal experience for live feeds. Okay. BB25. 2 seasons left, and then we'll maybe quickly run through some of the others from other countries and versions. Season 25, phenomenal first half. I would say great to Pantheon first half. I would say nigh unwatchable second half. It's really that simple. We've obviously talked a lot about season 25 very recently, so like we don't need to talk too much about it. Poll is live if you want to give your opinion. Hard to know where to put it. Like the second half is genuinely I genuinely think like zero redeeming features to the second half of the season. There's no reason to watch the feeds in the second half of the season. There's nothing there. First half of the season, you're not even watching the season if you're watching the episodes. You have to watch the feeds of the first half of the season. They are so much better than the episodes. It's an incredible experience watching the first half of that season. It's just like what like you guys have landed on smack dab in the middle. That's just solidly good. Yeah. I mean, I think it can depend on your philosophy. Like, do you go by high points or do you go by low points or do you weight them equally? I think I generally go by high points, so I'm inclined to go a little higher than good. But maybe just like near the top of good makes some sense. Maybe around there. Because it's, I mean, like ranking anything, you really have to like take into like your criteria really matters. And if the criteria is like, say, you have to watch all of the feeds, you have to sit down and watch all of it. What do you think? Where would you rank it? Like that matters. Like if I have to watch all of Big Brother 25, then it's pretty low because like I do not want to have to watch all of that. I don't care how good the first half is. But if I get to sort of check out and I'm ranking it more on the good parts, then it's a pretty good season, you know? And I tend to be more inclined to go toward the good. Like you can most of the time not have to watch things in real life. All right, Big Brother 26, final one. We just watched this season. Pantheon, great, good, meh, unwatchable. Big Brother 26, I think also phenomenal first at least half, right? When did Big Brother 26 start to falter? I would say around Janky Week. Um, and then it gets really slow. But what I will say about that is that like I think that the end game of BB26 is not as unwatchable as BB25 because at least, like I said, Chelsea was still there doing stuff, and manipulating and positioning and so on and so forth. It was a bit of a foregone conclusion, yes, but it was something. I wouldn't call it unwatchable. I'd call it meh. I'd place it firmly in meh. The last month of the season. Um, Yeah, I think season 20 it's similar to season 20 in how it functioned. Um in a really good and compelling first like 2/3 of the season with a lot of really interesting and fun little twists and turns. The structure worked really well. The competitions were better. It's a lot of good stuff here. And it really kept you going for a long time. And it kept you going for longer than BB25 did. Here's the poll for you guys. Um, I think for me, it's going to land probably toward the bottom of great because I think that if BB25 is toward the top of good, I think that BB26 is a tier above it, fairly solidly above it. Maybe more along the lines of like a big BB17. Like if I'm trying to compare to BB17, um, I might need some distance from it to really be able to compare there. Looks like you guys agree. You're in great as well. Um, my first instinct was 17 must be better than 26, but then I was like, oh, maybe I'm just too close to 26. Um, because like the season 17 things feel so classic, and the season 26 things feel like not classic, but that's because it just happened. It couldn't possibly be classic yet. You know what I mean? Like, surely Crazy Eyes is going to be classic. So, you know what? 17 at least. I think for now I'll put it below 17. Just because 17 was a little more consistent. 17 had some great highlights. 26 had some great highlights. 17 had some slow parts. 26 had some slow parts. But I think overall, 17 kept you engaged more consistently throughout. 26, you could really kind of tune out at the end. So I think I'd do that. All right, there it is. There's the tier list of US seasons. Let's pull me off the screen. Wait, could you really not hear me? It said you could hear me. You really couldn't hear me? That's wild. In my OBS mixer, it was showing that you could hear me. I don't know why that happened. That's really strange. Huh. Well, let me just do this then. Okay, now some of you are saying that you're messing with me. Um, I believe Shannon. Shannon wouldn't lie to me. All right. Well, let me just do it over again then. In the Pantheon, Big Brother 14, 10, All Stars, 24, and 6. In the great seasons, you have Big Brother 20, 3, 17, 26, 8, and 23. A surprising show for the 20s. 23, 20, and 24. All in the great to Pantheon tiers. And then in the teens, you have 14, 10, and 17. And then in the single digits, you have 3, 8, 6, and 7. So the single digits still have the highest representation here overall. This is 24, 20, and 23. Yeah. Oh, no, and 26. So it's close, actually. In the good tier, you have Big Brother 25, 16, 2, 1, 5, 4, 12, 11, and 18. Ooh, 26 having no flashback is a good call. I'm going to leave it in great, but I'm going to put it at the bottom of great. All right, in the meh tier, season 13, 15, 21, 19, and 22. I think this is the reason why we feel like the 20s are probably bad. But it's like what a bad series of seasons. Like 13, 15, 19, 21, 22. They're all within like a year or two of each other, mostly. And then some would have 16 down there. I didn't. And then unwatchable. The only one I thought was unwatchable is season 9. You guys disagree. You would put 22 in there. I think most Big Brother is watchable. Season 9 was the only one that was not watchable for me. Okay. Let's quickly run through some of the other stuff, though. BBOTT. I think for me, BBOTT has a couple of things. One, didn't love the game format. Not very fun for me. Two, the game format additionally made covering the season less fun for me. There was a lot of fandom wars. I was not a fan. Three, there was a lot of drama during that season that I was not a fan of. Not fun to watch for me. So those are 3 negatives. Huge positive. You got to see the diary rooms. You got to see the competitions. It felt like you were seeing everything. It had that Big Brother 1 novelty feature. And that made up for a lot. That was fun. So overall, I think I would probably place it in the good tier. Actually, no, hold on. This is specifically live feed rankings. Specifically live feed rankings. Getting to see everything. If I have Big Brother 1 in good, I have to put Big Brother OTT in good. But the problem is I didn't actually watch one. I'd think about putting it in great, but it just wasn't a great experience. The watching, if I eliminate the experience outside of watching it, maybe toward the top of good. I'm gonna keep it in good. I'm gonna keep it in good. Big Brother Celebrity 1. I would say you had Omarosa, you had Shannon Elizabeth. It was fine. Ariadna. I would call it good. The live feed experience watching Celebrity is not the best, I would say. The episodes are fine. The episodes can be very fun. Live feed's not as fun for Celebrity. Lots of cuts and, you know, strategy isn't always the best. Celebrity 2, I would say, in some ways was better, in other ways was worse. You had Candy, you had Tamar, some drama there, some strategy there, but it wasn't always fun drama. So I'd probably also just put that into good for me, and then Celebrity 3, I'd say was meh, pretty low meh. Then if we go to Canada, you go to season 1, I would say that's great. Great season of live feeds. Lots of fun stuff, even when it starts to get a little slow. Dan Giesling comes into the house. That's very fun. There's also the novelty of it being the first Canadian season. It was very uncensored. Good stuff. Canada 2, I think, goes in the Pantheon. At least close to it. So much good stuff in that season. So much good stuff. Canada 3, I would say, is great. The episodes were not great, but the feeds were really ranking the Canadian seasons is a little more impactful than ranking the Big Brother US seasons because there's actually such a difference. Canada 3, I'd say, is great for live feeds, not so much for the episodes. Canada 4, I would say, is good. I'd say the first half of Canada 4 is great to Pantheon. The second half of Canada 4 is good to meh. And so it averages out to good, probably. Canada 5. Canada 5, you probably put great. I don't think you put Pantheon because I think actually a lot of the Canada 5 greatness comes from the episodes, like the double eviction. The live feeds were great, but I don't know if the live feeds alone were Pantheon. Canada 6, I think. Upper great tier. I don't think we can quite get to Pantheon for 6, but it's definitely great. Canada 7, I think for me was good. I'd say upper good. Some would probably say meh. Most would maybe say meh. Canada 8. Canada 8 was perhaps unwatchable at this point. Canada 9, I would say, was great. Lots of back and forth, lots of characters, very fun. Gameplay was not always the toppest of tiers, but we have a very good winner and a lot of drama and strategic maneuvering. And then Canada 10, I'd say is Pantheon. I'd say Canada 10 is like upper Pantheon. You get to Canada 10 and you're like, Canada 10, All Stars, Canada 10, All Stars, Canada 10, Canada 10. I think Canada 10 over All Stars. Then you go Big Brother 10, Canada 10. I think for me personally, I place Canada 10 feed experience over Big Brother 10 feed experience for a couple of reasons. One, I was covering the show at that point, and the experience of it was very different. I was more invested. The finale was just phenomenal, and the feeds weren't part of the finale, so it's hard to take that out of account. But even barring that, the gummy bears, like there's a lot of really really great stuff in Canada 10. But I don't know. Canada also has a lot of feed cuts by then, so there's arguments back and forth. I think I still place 14 top. I think the funeral was hard to beat, and Big Brother 14 still had very uncensored feeds for the most part by then. So at that time, then you go to 11, and it's unwatchable, and you go to 12, and it's unwatchable. We've added more unwatchables. um, and that's about it. That's what we got. That's the live feed tier list. Literally unwatchable. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Well, that was Big Brother live feed tier list over 3 hours. I really didn't think it would last this long. That's my whole day. Hopefully you enjoyed. I think the next current planned stream is going to be probably just next weekend, but maybe we will squeeze something else in this week. I will try to let you know ahead of time if possible. Tastemakers is coming out tomorrow. It was also a jumbo episode. Traders is going to be Thursday. Maybe I'll do something around that. But check out the Tastemakers if you want my thoughts on the Golden Globes and what I thought was some of my favorite stuff of the year. And then Thursday as well, we're gonna have the this is the thing, we're gonna have the formerly named Memory Wall podcast, the Big Brother 2 podcast. Tune in for that. And yeah, we'll just make that happen. Are we gonna do a tier list of just the show without the feeds? Oh, that could be interesting as well. All right, thank you so much for hanging out. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Is Dwight streaming? Looks like Dwight is streaming some Blood on the Clock Tower. Okay. If you haven't watched Blood on the Clock Tower on a stream before, check it out. It's a good time. I'll send you over to Dwight. It's a very fun game. It's really interesting to play. It's got some fun mechanics. And I think it's pretty fun to watch on stream as well. So check out what Dwight's doing. And then if we end up playing again, we usually play that on Saturdays. So you can come and check us out while we play some Blood on the Clock Tower then. But in the meantime, thanks for hanging out with me here today. Go say hi to Dwight. And I will see all of you next time.
Oh, sorry, my lap